KoitCast. Today's guest is an anthropologist, archaeologist, author, paranormal investigator, and explorer of higher consciousness. She's had many paranormal experiences and works to understand how they fit in with the standard scientific view of the universe. A massive Koit welcome to Pamela Nance. Hi Pamela, welcome to KoitCast.
Hi, Koit. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate the opportunity.
No, super lush. It's an honour for me to have you here, so thank you for coming. I suppose we should start with the old classic, which I always ask everyone: who are you, where you're from, etc.
Pamela Nance. I live in the United States in North Carolina, in the western part of the state. I have degrees in anthropology and archaeology, and just finished up a 30-year career at a leading medical university. So that was kind of my day job, but then on the side, I'm an experiencer and researcher into the unknown.
Excellent, and loads of furtive ground there for us to go into. Sorry, fertile, not furtive. That would be completely different. Let's jump in with something I always like to ask people: what certain job titles mean. So, anthropology, from your perspective, what is it?
Anthropology for me is just studying the cultural aspects of like the indigenous peoples across the earth, the history of mankind, studying the fossil record, how we evolved through time,
Hmm.
uh, and just ethnography, daily activities, daily life of people of the past, and how that has transferred into the present day. We can only go as far as what we've learned from our past. So looking at the cultural aspect of any population is very important in determining where we are today.
Yeah, looking back to go forward, essentially,
Exactly.
presumably in line with your other thing, which was archaeology.
Yes.
Same principle there, yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay, so let's jump into what we would deem your paranormal journey. What was your introduction to the paranormal world?
Um, my real introduction occurred a few weeks before I turned 6. This would have been 1962. I came down with a severe case of red measles. This was probably 2 years before a measles vaccine was introduced. So there was a measles epidemic, children were dying. I became extremely ill. There was not a lot that could be done for children at that point. It was a viral illness, antibiotics didn't work. So my parents basically kept vigil over me for several days. They moved me to their bedroom, set up with me, pretty much around the clock. I had a very high temperature, delirious at times, and I really thought I was dying. And you might think, well, why would a young child have those thoughts about dying? I witnessed my grandmother pass away a year before. And so I knew the trauma that introduced into the family, and I felt so extremely ill, I actually thought I was dying. And I asked my dad, am I dying? And he lifted me up and hugged me and said, no, you're not dying. And he laid me back onto the bed, onto the pillow. And I looked up at the ceiling of their bedroom and it opened, and I could
Oh,
see the blue sky, white fluffy clouds. And from the midst of that scene, a hand reached down and took me by the hand, and off we went, like zooming through the clouds. I could see the wispy clouds around me, and we're going faster and faster. And I remember hanging tightly onto this person's hand. And we landed in an ancient village that appeared to be possibly in the Middle East. But when we landed, I looked up and the being was so surrounded by brilliant white light that I could not determine the features. But slowly, that bright, brilliant light subsided, and I could tell that it was a male figure. He still had me by the hand. We entered this little village on a pathway. There were short stone walls, neat little houses, kind of rock and mud type houses, people tending gardens, growing beautiful flowers, tending their animals. It was a very vivid scene. Um, and, I felt just such a connection with these people. When I would make eye contact, it was, at a soul level. And I just felt like I knew them, that I'd been there before. And I looked into the light being's eyes, and he nodded his head as though he was agreeing with my thoughts.
Ah.
And I was back in bed, waking up, and my parents were crying. Evidently, they couldn't awaken me. I'm not sure exactly how long, I was out, but they were very relieved that I awoke. And subsequently, I improved over the course of several days. And as part of my recovery, they would take me outside. It was in October, so we have a nice Indian summer here in North Carolina. So they'd take me out, put me in my little rocking chair in the sun in the afternoon, and I had a great view of a nearby mountain that has a lot of significance with the indigenous peoples of the area. But I just loved that mountain, loved always looking at it. And so I focused on that mountain, and I soon found that I was flying towards the mountain. I guess I had, like, my consciousness had popped out of my body, and I was zooming. It was like a flying dream. If you've ever had one of those flying dreams where you're just sort of fitting over the terrain, and I could see the grass and the trees, and I flew to that mountain, circled around. I could see these birds nesting on top. And then I came back and I was in my body. And I remember looking at my parents, and they were talking, as though they were completely unaware of what I just experienced. And so for, I guess, about the next 4 years or so, I could sort of at will do that. And I shared that with my mom. She was Native American, Cherokee, and very open-minded to psychic dreams. And she came from a long maternal line of healers and midwives and psychics and intuitives. And so I shared that my experience with her, and she didn't shut me down. She just said, you might not want to talk about this outside the home because not everyone understands.
Hmm.
So that was really my first introduction into this other world of consciousness that is
And it's a
not,
big introduction, but all that stuff
yes,
is big. So a
yeah.
number of questions I have on that. So when you said that the ceiling opened up, how did that work? Can you sort of describe it?
I remember my dad laying me back on the pillow, and my eyes were closed, and when I opened my eyes, it was just kind of like it just sort of melted away, and I could see the blue sky and the white clouds, and then this hand, just a light, just brilliant white light, and a hand taking me by the hand.
Could you
And
see the arm or literally just the hand sort of thing?
well, I could see some of the arm, but the light was so brilliant that it
Yeah.
was really, the hand was the clearest part of
Hmm.
the person.
And was it like normal human hand size, or was it big or small?
Um, just like a man's
Ah, okay,
hand
cool.
taking me by the hand. And, in my little child's mind, seeing that light being, in that village, I sort of thought it was Jesus, because I came
Hmm.
from a Christian background. And but as an adult now looking back, I think, it was an introduction into a past life by
Oh,
perhaps
okay.
a guide, a celestial guide. But at the time, I didn't fully, of
Yeah,
course,
sure. No,
understand
you
what was
couldn't.
happening.
Yeah, you couldn't process that. So now that you're looking back at it an adult and you've pondered it, no doubt, across the years to now, why were you taken there? What were you show? What were you being shown?
I was being shown my connection to the past, that helping me understand that we're not so much, this present physical form, that, you know, we can experience life in other times. It was almost like a disruption of time itself.
Mm.
And I've been very intimately connected to time since that happened. And so I think the being was showing me that I had lived before.
So
This
it's just
was,
showing you a larger world, so to speak.
yeah, yeah.
Have you looked? I know this may sound silly, but have you looked for that place somehow?
I have. And, looking online at photographs of villages in the Middle East, and drawings and um, paintings, I really think that it just felt like it was somewhere in the Middle East.
Okay, but you got no locale because it's. I know it's hard to look for the
Yeah.
same sorts of buildings, and you don't know how long ago it was, I presume.
Um, they were wearing sandals and sort of tunic type clothing. And so I feel that it was, pretty ancient.
Oh, okay. So yeah, and then there's no way those buildings are going to be the same nowadays, are there?
No.
No. So you got no hope of finding that one. It's wow, what a profound experience to have at such a young age. And had your parents said that you died? Is that what had happened
Um,
to you?
well, I call it a near-death experience because of leaving my body. Maybe it was an out-of-body experience, but I've had an out-of-body experience, and that's more in the physical realm, where you can leave your physical body and see your surroundings. So I know that I was extremely ill. They were, very upset, crying over me when I did awaken. Um, I don't think I died. Um, and a near death experience, you don't die, or
Well, no,
unless,
no, because it's near. Yeah.
yeah, it's near death. So I think that it was like a near death experience.
Interesting, interesting. Now, do you think, right, if you hadn't have had that experience, is that where ultimately I'm asking this, is that where you got the gift from to then do all the other things that you have done subsequently and see the things you've seen subsequently?
I think it would have happened regardless of that
Ah,
experience, just because of my maternal bloodline and the things that I know about my ancestors, going all the way back to my great great grandmother, um, and bringing in sacred geometry to the location where I grew up. A lot of very strong energy around that piece of property.
ah,
There are two significant ley lines that intersect near there. And just having that maternal ancestry, and a mother who, openly talked about psychic dreams, psychic impressions. That was just a part of my life as I was a kid. So if I had not had that experience, I think, it wouldn't have mattered. I would still have had, I think I was born,
yeah, I know what you mean.
with this penchant.
The reason I asked that question is because having spoken to a few NDEs before, and no doubt you will have, is that a lot of people report that they get gifts when they have that experience. But obviously yours, you think you would have had them regardless, which is cool anyway, isn't it?
It is. I think, having some subsequent experiences shortly after that experience, I think it would have opened me up to these things anyway.
Well, we'll jump into those definitely. Oh, I have a question regarding the bit when you're sat on the porch in your chair and you're essentially projecting yourself towards the mountain and then going there. A, that's amazing. Most people want to be able to fly, so to have that experience, superb. But that's a powerful thing, isn't it? I've not heard a lot of people be able to do that.
It is a very powerful thing. And, I loved doing it. It was addictive in a
I
way.
bet I'd love to do it right now.
Um, no, I've had flying dreams, and when I wake up, I always wish I could go back to sleep
Mm.
and continue the dream. It's very similar to that. It's just a joyous feeling. And I would sneak away from my brothers and sisters, to that part of the yard where I could view the mountain, and just pop out. But as I guess around the age of 9, I don't know if other things just started happening, but I just stopped doing it. But then
Right.
it occurred later in life.
I bet you
So
loved it when that came back.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would as well in your position.
Well,
Um,
sometimes I'm like, okay, I've got to get back in my body because I have to go to work.
well, as long as it's not happening when you're driving a car or anything, yeah,
Right.
you don't need that. The indigenous side of things, right? That side of your ancestry, do they have a name for what that is?
Um, I guess just my great great grandmother was a medicine woman. She could talk. She was a fire talker, meaning she could talk fire from burns.
Hmm.
So I don't know if there's like one particular name that you would give these abilities, but she was I guess foremost a healer, a psychic healer. But I
Mm.
was taught the ability to use the ability of talking fire from burns when I was a very small child. And I'm still successful, minor burns, fevers, that kind of thing.
Can you
Nothing.
just explain a bit more about that?
Well, it is a sacred part of the Cherokee culture that's passed down through the maternal bloodline. And there is a saying that goes along with these hand movements. And if I had to compare the hand movements with something, it would be Reiki,
Oh yes, yeah.
because there are specific hand movements that you make over the burn. And then you say to yourself this poem, and you can't say it aloud. You're never permitted to say it aloud. So I can't repeat it. I do have it written in a story that I contributed to a book, um, but you just never say it aloud. So you basically just concentrate on the area of injury or fever and, you know, kind of go in to, practice some mindfulness and like do the hand movements and say the saying to yourself. And I have what I've noticed for me, when the energy starts to really flow and I have my eyes closed during these procedures, I get, when I know I'm healing, because I'll get like a red line that gets faster and faster and faster back and forth, in my field of vision while I have my eyes closed. And when that stops, I know I'm finished. So,
That's kind of cool though that you've got a visual representation of the success. Do you think you need that as a scientific sort of person to know? Do you think that's why you get that image?
um, yeah, I guess that's what works for me. I'm not sure how that evolved, but I just started paying attention to this red line, and maybe red is for the inflammation, the fire. I don't know, but I just know that when I'm working, it goes faster and faster and faster, and then when I'm finished, it stops.
Either way, that's a cool indicator for you.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
speaking to I don't know if you know the lady Kay Randall May. She's a medical intuitive. and we were talking about stuff similar to this, and she said she sees in her mind a dial. So
Ah,
yours is, you've got something similar. That's the reason I asked that
yeah,
question, you know.
that's
And
cool.
she's also a logical, scientific based person like yourself. So I wonder if there's something about that the logical mind needs something to focus on so it can see a task
I
completion, you know?
think that's probably right on,
Hmm.
that our logical brain wanting some type of visual indicator.
Yeah, I know
Uh,
my brain would need that. Otherwise,
yeah,
you then like fight yourself inside,
yeah,
you know?
like, am I finished? What's happening?
Yeah, yeah, it's a strange one. Now the projecting yourself bit again. Are there any other places you went, or was it literally just that mountain that you could go to?
Just that mountain, because I have such a connection to that mountain. And that's the only place I wanted to go. I really just focused on that mountain. Um, and it's interesting because when I was in graduate school, I studied the indigenous tribe that worshipped that mountain. So I kind of came full circle, you know,
Hmm. So
and
it's in your
knowing,
life. It's going to be in your life, sort of thing.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Wow. And how far are
It's
you off the ground? Are you like literally a foot off, or are you really high?
well, it's like I'm flying, so I'm really like a bird.
Ah,
And I'm not close to the ground. I'm above the treetops. So,
okay. A
I'm
decent height then.
swooping.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really cool because I would follow the terrain, up and down and over the trees and could see the grass. And the cool thing about the mountain is it's all quartzite. There's maybe a foot of dirt, and everything else is quartz.
Hmm.
So
Electrical
you can
conductivity.
imagine
Yeah.
this huge electrical,
Hmm.
magnetic stone sitting there.
And gold. Should be gold there, some quartz as well.
So, I was just completely drawn to it, and I could circle around the very top and see these rare birds. They're a type of raven that nest up there, and they're protected. No one can fly drones within that area because of the birds. They're
Hmm.
extremely important to the area. But I could see them, and at times they would be flying with me. Um, and I can't tell you how long this lasted. Um, if it was minutes or longer. But I would always return and just feel so at peace and thankful, for that experience.
I know a lot of people listening to this, and I'll repeat again for myself. I would love to have that experience. You know.
It was beautiful. And if folks want to research the mountain, it's Pilot Mountain, Pilot. There's a lot of information online about how special it is. It's
Awesome.
um, it's very ancient.
I have one more question about your flying experience. Did you see yourself, as in, like, could you see arms or anything, or were you just seeing and that's it? No, there's no parts or anything that you could see.
Hmm. I guess it was more of a feeling, of
Okay.
feeling myself, not necessarily like looking at my body or anything,
Yeah.
but I knew that I was like sort of belly down,
Yeah. It makes
down.
me think this, right, which is, were you as a soul or whatever we want to call that traveling as an energy field or whatever, or maybe were you put into one of those ravens and were you flying? Were you that?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I haven't thought of that. That's interesting because I really don't recall ever seeing like my body. I just know that I was belly down, going over the
Hmm.
terrain. So
Because I know isn't there that scenario within indigenous cultures that
they can
the
embody.
mind can transfer into an animal, yeah. And so
Yes,
to
yes.
be it being transferred into a raven or whatever bird it could have been, it could be that.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to meditate on that.
Yeah. See.
Yeah.
My brain goes to this. Is there a way you could find that out? I.e., could you do a regression or something and then train yourself to look left or right? And could you see
Oh
wings? Or
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I have a very good friend who does hypnotic regression, so that'll be my request.
Hey, here's another question. Whilst we're on the regression subject, have you ever thought of that for the ET experiences?
Oh yes, I have been regressed.
Oh, you
For,
have. Oh, okay.
yes.
We'll get to that
Yeah.
later then, because that's gonna form a nice big thing. See, part of me is worried about being regressed if for the ET side of things. I don't know whether I would like to do it. What might you find out is, I don't
Right.
know. Maybe that's coming from a fear aspect of me, but it scares me a
Yeah,
little bit.
I would try to let go of the fear,
I know
because
it's
I don't
hard to
think
do.
there's anything to be afraid of.
Okay, I need to process that. Get in there. Let's look a bit more about your scientific background. So, what career path then did you follow, and could you go into it a bit more detail than what you gave in your intro?
Well, so coming, I guess, out of the 70s as a hippie, I was
Hmm.
very interested in um, other cultures and metaphysics, and then as we go into the 80s, I learned more and more about ancient sites, Stonehenge and Machu Picchu, and there were lots of books available during the metaphysical 80s. And so that really piqued my interest. And having the indigenous background, I decided to go for my undergrad in religion, anthropology, archaeology, and sociology. That kind of tended to cover all the bases of the things that I wanted to learn. And, my desire was to be an archaeologist. Um, but it's difficult making a living as an archaeologist.
Mm.
And so I had to fall back on my sociology degree and ended up going into social science research through a local medical center. And so that was my focus in my day job for 30 years. I worked on clinical trial research in women's health and blood pressure and those kinds of things. But my true interest was always the metaphysical realm. And um, I knew that I wanted to go for higher education. And so I pursued a master's degree in anthropology and archaeology. Um, but still, there was not a lot of places I could go with those degrees. So I just, stayed in the medical field, which for me gave me such great background in research and data collection. And better, um, what a better platform to have if you're going to start researching the paranormal, to understand how to approach an investigation. That really laid the foundation in my approach to investigating locations where activity had been reported, paranormal activity, um, as well as, going back and thinking about the events I had experienced in my childhood, that would further help me explore those areas. Um, so, the research background was very beneficial and eventually having sort of a second profession in the field of the paranormal.
Yes, it's a common theme, and this is why I always like to ask about people's backgrounds because I always think for the word you said, foundation, the path, if you want to believe that there's a path we're meant to be on, we seem to go into something first to learn, pick up all the tools and experiences to then be able to do this. Is that what
Yes,
you think has happened to you?
I think so because, as badly as I wanted to be an archaeologist, I went on a totally different path but it served me well, um, because I was involved in every form and step of research, from the basic data entry all the way to analyzing data, with statistical analyses. Um, so it absolutely, I went where I was supposed to go.
Hmm. Can I ask about archaeology a sec? When you wanted to go into archaeology, and I'm also highly interested in archaeology, we had this wonderful program called Time Team over here in the UK. We used to watch it religiously. Is it what is it about archaeology? Is it discovering something in the ground, something precious? What is it for you?
It's just a drive to know as much as I possibly can about our past. And I'm in an area of very historic significance. There are early settlements of the Moravians in this area. So settlements, happened here in the early 1700s. And so I was able to go to many of those locations for the archaeological work. And so that it was just this desire to dig and to find, as you said, as much as I could about our past. And when you would discover an artifact, it was just like you like discovered another planet or something. It
Yeah.
was so exciting. And so I had all aspects of the archaeological work that was available to me, cleaning the artifacts, logging them, filing them, and also, on site. And it was just a great experience. And it really fulfilled a desire in me, to learn as much as I could about my local history.
Awesome. I always think archaeology is about it's discovering a treasure, but that treasure is not necessarily monetarily value. It's like information and knowledge, and that's the
Oh
real
yeah,
treasure.
so it's like a chicken bone, like, okay, these people were eating chicken. I mean, it could be as simple as that, or
Mm.
a button, nothing. We really, we would find maybe a cracked piece of pottery. That would be, a big find. Arrowheads, a lot of,
Oh yeah, I
indigenous
bet you'd have lots of that.
artifacts.
Mm.
Um, but it was all very exciting. I loved it.
Yeah, in another life, I could quite easily have been an archaeologist. I love the hunt for things.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's the old exploration of man side of things. I don't know. There was a quote from your website which was, "I operated primarily from the left brain as an analytical, rational, and logical thinker." Can you explain that? Because obviously the other side is something else, isn't it?
Yes. So, in my day job, I had to operate from the left brain. It was just the nature of the business, and collecting data, analyzing the data, um, doing the programming. Um, there was no room for any creativity, except maybe in how you presented your final PowerPoint of
Mm, yeah,
findings. That might have been the creative part, but really it was all left brain empirical work.
yeah. And then how then when you contrast that with your experiences, did you ever feel that you were battling science versus, we'll call it woo for just, for that phrase. Were you ever battling yourself?
Not really. I've been so lucky in that I've had a great balance, between the two careers, the professional career and the metaphysical paranormal career, and so much support. I don't know what it is about social science research, but it tends to attract people that are also creative and right-brained. And so even my colleagues, they knew about my past and the things that had happened to me. Because some of those things, like my near-death experience in my 30s, I was working, and so I was in the hospital, and so they knew about these things, and they were very supportive. So I could do my day job, and then do the paranormal work, and never felt any sort of battle. They actually, in a way, complemented each other, um, because I had an opportunity to travel in my professional career. And that brought me to places that, hey, I want to come back and investigate this, in my paranormal work.
Oh, I see. You saw the other bits there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so, and made a lot of
Cool.
connections. And so, yeah, it was just synchronicity.
Good, good. I didn't know whether you'd answer that, like you had this internal conflict, but that's cool that you didn't, and you didn't get pressure from outside to say, oh, she's the weird one, ignore her, let's demote her or anything, you know?
Yeah, and I really didn't care what they thought.
Oh, good.
I really didn't. This is me. This has been my life. I know what I've experienced, and you know, I I don't really care whether people think I'm crazy, if they believe me, if they don't believe me, because I know what I've experienced. But I had such great support from my colleagues. I really did. Even, the PhDs who some had had their own experiences. They didn't openly talk about it, but they would come and talk to me. Um, and I was even approached at one point by a secretary to one of the deans to help her find an exorcist for her nephew. So, I helped in some cases.
Yeah, see, that's the thing though. I bet they were all publicly saying, yeah, none of that exists, and then behind the doors, oh, hello, Pam, can
Right.
you help me with this? Yeah, that's what it's like, isn't it? Not so much now, but it was, a little while ago.
Oh yeah,
And it's
yeah.
definitely changing for the better, I think.
They came around, in those 30 years. I was pretty much with the same study, which is rare in clinical trial research, but I only worked on two studies. So, and the grants, were usually submitted by the same people. So, over the 3 decades, they eased up a bit and knew, what I was all about.
Well, the good news is, as more and more of this comes to light in the mainstream media, they should be coming to you anyway and saying, "You bloody were right," that sort of thing. You'll
Oh
get a
yeah,
lot more of
yeah.
that.
Because we've got so many PhDs and MDs now coming on
Mm.
board, and the whole science of consciousness, is really on the forefront.
Yeah, massively, massively fascinating. So moving on from your out of body experiences and your travel, I don't know, what do you call it? Astral travel, dream travel? What do you call it?
I guess it's astral travel. When you leave your body,
Yeah.
it's not dream. It wasn't dream or lucid dreaming. I've had lucid dreaming. Um, it was, I would say out of body travel, astral travel.
Your lucid dreaming. Did you teach yourself to do that, or did it happen automatically?
It just happened. I, I didn't really teach myself, but I had a colleague that was really into the lucid dreaming, and he would tell me about his experiences. And so I just decided to give it a try. Um, but I have to say, I haven't done that in some time. But, with practice, anyone can do it. You can participate in your dreams.
I tried, I struggled, and I think ultimately I failed to achieve it. There's something about me that stops me from accessing all these experiences. Maybe it's that fear thing we talked about earlier.
Yeah, it could be.
Could well
Yeah.
be. Right, so after these experiences, you had the next one at 10 where it said human beings were taking you.
Yeah, so
What's that?
so one evening or one night, it was towards the end of the school year. I was 10 years old, so that it would have been 1967. 66. I wasn't quite 10, so I guess it was the end of the school year in 66. And my mom worked a second shift job. So my dad had left that evening to go pick her up. She didn't drive. And my oldest sister was in charge of the kids. She was in the kitchen doing the homework. So I went to bed. I remember my dad leaving. I went to bed. And as I was lying there, eyes closed, I could feel someone or something beside the bed. So I thought my sister had come in. And when I looked, there were two people standing there, and they were flesh and blood. They were not, it was not a dream. They weren't an apparition. They were full-bodied humanoid type beings, dressed in black and black bodysuits, tight-fitting bodysuits. The woman had light brown hair, about shoulder length, with bangs. The male had hair down. They had like, I, hey, I'm dressed like them. They had turtlenecks on,
You're
black
not an alien, are
turtlenecks. And his hair came down, a little below the turtleneck. And I just remember thinking, they're so beautiful. They were perfect, very chiseled features. And he was holding like this giant timepiece. And I don't really remember his lips moving, but the message was, when the timepiece goes from 12 back around to 12, we're going to take you. And I watched this timepiece count down, and then I was off. It was like I was floating. I don't know if they actually took my physical body or if it was my consciousness. But I kind of remember floating. And then when I sort of came to, I was in a room, a brightly lit room, lying on my back, and I could I could sense that these beings were behind me, but I could not move. I could just like look back, and I could barely see them, and they were doing some procedure like at my head. And but what I left out prior to the countdown on the timepiece, the male said, "We're going to take you," because this is kind of weird,
Okay.
because in a past life, 5,000 years ago, you beheaded a sacred white elephant. And we're here to balance your karma from that event. And so, I'm on this table, they're working above my head. Then I'm back in my bed, and they're gone, and I'm totally freaked out because I really did not understand what had just happened to me. My sister could not console me. My mother, when she got home, couldn't console me. But what was really strange, the next day when I awoke, it was either the next day or the following day, I had just this extremely redness from the neck up, just covering my entire neck and face, almost like a burn or
Hmm.
very fine rash. My parents took me to the doctor. No one could figure out what was going on. I was given some cream to put on the rash or the burn or whatever, but ended up missing a couple of weeks of school because I look like a freak. Um, but I do want to tell the audience that as a 10-year-old in a Southern Baptist community, I knew nothing about sacred white elephants, karma. This was totally outside of my realm of knowledge, but that's what was downloaded to me, that they were there to get rid of that karmic debt that I had incurred 5,000 years previous. And as an adult, I fully understand, that this was for my benefit. But I also have heard stories of other people having sort of these same type of burns or, redness after being on board a craft. So I don't know if I was exposed to something on board the craft or if that was part of the procedure that they were doing, that this
Mm.
redness um, occurred, but it happens to people.
Well, it suggests obviously that your physical form was taken if your physical form was affected. That's what it
Yeah,
suggests. It doesn't mean that's the case because you
yeah,
could manifest through, like birthmarks and stuff and spontaneous, what stigmata and other things. Those things are meant to be consciousness driven into the body. But that's what it suggests. What have you pondered down the years over the meaning of an alien intervention, if we want to call it that? Why does that need to happen to get rid of karma? It seems weird, doesn't it?
it does. But I have met these two beings since that encounter,
Okay.
and I know that they work on behalf of my higher self. And I think, they possibly intervened into that one past life, um, just to clear that debt. Perhaps it would have held me back from reaching my full spiritual and consciousness potential in this life. Um, but what it did do, it really opened my mind. And it prepared me when I did start investigating the paranormal. It prepared me for that because I was never afraid of anything. After that encounter with those two beings, nothing scares me. And I've been in some pretty scary places, and I'm unfazed. I challenge the spirits. So in a sense, it prepared me for that. And really, I don't fear the unknown. I run into it head first.
Mm.
I want to know. I want to know more.
The sacred elephant, metaphorical, as in a person called White Elephant, or beheading an actual elephant, which is, oh, by the
I,
way, how would you do that?
I that really, as an adult, when I started like coming into this whole consciousness, I did a lot of research. And there were five brothers during the Mahabharata and the Indian sagas that were very warring brothers, and one did behead a sacred white elephant.
An
Um,
actual elephant.
yes,
Oh, okay.
evidently there were cases of rare white elephants in our distant past. So there was this one brother that did behead a sacred white elephant. I'm not saying that I was that guy, but
Mm.
it kind of fits the timeline and what happened. I think the Mahabharata and those wars were, certainly that long ago. And I used to remember the brother's name. It started with an A. I can't recall his name, but anyway, I do have other past lives in India
I was going to
with
ask you that.
with elephants. Yeah.
I was going to ask you whether you had a regression, like we mentioned earlier, to go back to see what your catalogue of past lives were, and whether that 5,000 years ago one, where you supposedly sorted out the elephant, has there been, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 since? Meaning that that karma would have had to have gone through all those people. Maybe that these beings or your higher self thought, right, I've had enough now. We can't keep going through 20 lives and still not resolving X, Y, or Z. And that's why that intervention came.
Yeah, possibly because in some of my past life regressions, clearly I am connected to India, to the Taj Mahal, to elephants. I was in one life I was an orphaned young boy, that was taken in by this group of men who had an entire um, team of elephants that they worked. They were the elephant workers. And so they would build, dams and bridges, and they used these elephants, to pick up
Mm.
huge logs. And so I was introduced into that as a young boy, probably about 8 or 9 years old. I was given a baby elephant that was mine. I raised it. And that regression, I took it all the way to the death scene as an elderly man, still within that part of society. So, that's really not a bad life, I guess. I guess I could have had a family, it might have been a better life, but I felt a camaraderie and love amongst that group, and love for my elephant, and um, but a few others, but they weren't traumatic or anything. They were, good memories.
It's it just makes me think then, why did you have to be cleared of it? I know you mentioned earlier that that must have been a block to stop you achieving X, Y, or Z, but you'd have thought then maybe they would have these interventionists would have had to have done that to previous other past lives, is what I'm getting at. Maybe they did.
I don't know. I think maybe that it was just such a horrendous act that I just needed to have it removed.
Mm.
Um, you know, I tell a lot of folks that my goal in each life is not to return to the earthly plane. And maybe that's what's has kept me coming back here time and time again. Not having that cleared
I
from my
see.
past.
Do you? I've been saying this a lot recently myself. I mentioned it to Tiff a few times, which is I don't want to come back here again. I don't know why I know that, but I don't. How do we stop it?
We just have to like participate in this conversation, um, and not shut down the idea that there's so much more than just this 3D environment, this materialistic world that we live in. Um, you have to, and it takes a lot of work to not constantly like tune into the material, to be locked to that device, to look up at the stars, look up at the sky, talk to people, um, and nurture that bit of consciousness in each of us that we share. And I think as we practice that and we live it, we elevate our vibration, our energy, and as we continue to raise that vibration, we become too energetic for this dense 3D environment, and we're able to move on to a higher frequency of existence, a higher dimension. Um, but it takes work, and you've got to pay attention. You you can't second guess things. So many people have things happen and they just try to blow it off or rationalize it away instead of like really saying, okay, what just happened to me? How is this possible? Um, so I just think, the more we talk, the more we share, the more that we go in, through mindfulness, meditation, elevate that vibration, that energetic pattern, perhaps we can, go to a higher realm
Get off the
next time.
ride. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's interesting. I've never met anyone else who also says they want to get off the ride.
yeah, I really do. And maybe, and I call these two beings, Philip and Elizabeth.
Was that their
Uh,
real names? Did they have badges on?
that's what they, that's what they gave me.
Oh, really? Wow.
I think it's only because that's what I needed to like
Oh, I
understand
see.
in English. I don't really know that that's their true identity. Um, but maybe they realized that I needed that clearing in
Hmm.
order to be able to move on. And I'm
I
not
have a
going to
question.
say I won't come back next time, but maybe I'll be able to leave quicker.
Oh, yeah, a step closer at least.
Yeah,
Now, the Philip and the other, sorry, who was the other one you called?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. So Philip and Elizabeth. I need to ask a couple of questions about them. The first one is you mentioned that potentially your higher self employed them to help you. What does that tell you about some sort of weird hierarchy going on somewhere? What have you thought
Well,
about that?
not necessarily a hierarchy, but I know that, from my experiences and from the research that I've done, we are we're such energetic beings that when we go to the other side, we're we're full. We're the complete energetic being. There's so much energy on the other side. And to come back into this 3D dense gravity laden environment, we can't possibly bring all of that energy with us. We leave some of it on the other side. And that's the higher self that we're always connected to, that we can communicate with if we just quiet ourselves with that intention. Um, and we've all had experiences where we've averted danger or had moments of intuitiveness. Is that the higher self stepping in? Um, so, I think that we all have that energy component that's still over there.
Okay. So where do Philip and Elizabeth fit into that?
They are, they're energetic beings beyond the 3D. They have transitioned, as we hope to a higher vibration. And evidently, at some point in my existence, I was part of that group, or they interceded in my development early on as a soul on planet Earth. But I've had a connection with them for thousands and thousands of years. This is what they've downloaded to me. Um, and I think maybe in this lifetime, I'm in a better position to fully understand the role that they've played. And that's why I think they first appeared to me and that they've continued to kind of show up, to let me know that they're still with me. Um, but they're physical in a, they're physical beings. They just vibrate and live in a higher dimension.
So we're like on level one, they've graduated this Earth school, and they're on level two, say. I don't know, I'm just
Yeah,
throwing that out
yeah,
there.
or maybe level three. I don't know,
Or yeah,
but
or whatever that is, yeah.
yeah, they're like fourth or fifth dimensional beings.
I need to ask you a question. It's going to sound kind of weird and maybe perverted, but I genuinely don't mean it this way. I'm just interested. You mentioned they're physical. Did the woman have breasts?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so are they human then, do you think? Or
They
just a different
looked
version?
they looked very human, except for the eyes. The eyes were really large and dark, like not a lot of color, more pupil,
Okay.
and larger than our eyes, but short of that, very humanoid.
Have you ever spoken to
Tall.
them for them to tell you where they live and how they live? I.e., are they on a plane and they can see trees and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's part of the encounter that I had in 2015 in the missing time.
Missing time. Okay, well let's
Yeah,
jump into that one then, if you don't mind, and
okay,
then you can tell me all about that.
sure. Um, so, of course, having this variation through my childhood of the ETs and the paranormal, um, and then I had a near-death experience in my early 30s, and I did go to the other side, and I actually died. You know, they coded me a couple of times. So that, of course, made me question everything when I had that near-death experience in my 30s. And then in the 2000, early 2000s, paranormal investigating became very popular. You know, there were a lot of shows on TV. So I decided, hey, you know, I've had paranormal experiences as well as this ET stuff, and I'm going to get some equipment and go out to some of these sites and just see what's really going on here. I wasn't so convinced that, you know, that these people are deceased in any way. Um, I felt that it was more of, you know, these are individuals existing in another timeline. Um, So I approached it as an archaeologist, layering, digging through all the layers of occupation at these sites. And over time, I found that they were very communicative. They would tell me things about themselves. But in that mix of what I would call astral plane communication from these spirits, for lack of a better word, I started getting some off planet type of communication. When I would ask, you know, where are you from? Meaning, I just meant like historically. And I started getting um, Adela, beyond Ort. Then I would say, you know, well, how do you get here? Portal and wormhole. So I started getting things that weren't in the historic timeline any longer. They sounded off planet. And so that put me on a path of studying quantum physics and how that interfaces with the paranormal and these extraterrestrial communications and sightings, and, you know, studying Einstein's theories of general and special relativity and all of that stuff. And so I put together a PowerPoint of the paranormal and quantum physics and introduced the off-planet aspects at a conference in Atlanta, Georgia, in 2013. At that conference, I had the pleasure to meet Stanton Friedman,
Oh, cool.
who, you know, brought Roswell to the forefront of media. He was a nuclear physicist, very into Roswell and all forms of ET contact. And so he sat in on my presentation, was very impressed with the scientific approach to the paranormal and the off-planet communication. And he said, you know, I've got a really good friend I think you would enjoy meeting, Kathleen Marden.
Oh yes.
And Kathleen is the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. She is a MUFON investigator, has been involved in MUFON for 40 years, very experienced. He said, you would really benefit in meeting her. So in 2015, I met Kathleen in person. She was with a friend who was actually having paranormal activity in her home and wanted me to do an investigation. And I did, and I solved a lot of the questions that she had. And Kathleen was just interested in looking at my technique. And at the end of the investigation, she said, I think it would be really neat for you to take your paranormal investigative technique to a location where there's been ET activity and abduction, you know, and approach it as an investigator. So she introduced me to Chris Bledsoe.
Oh, yes.
And Chris Bledsoe is an experiencer, lifetime, many experiences similar to my own, from childhood. And so I went with my investigative partner to Chris's home in June of 2015, just to meet him and to do an investigation on his property. There was a catalpa tree in his backyard that was a sort of the point of a lot of activity, orb activity. The tree itself would spontaneously burst into flames.
Lovely.
And he and his son, there are videos of he and his son putting the fire out, and then it would just start burning again. So we call that the burning tree. But it lived. And, when I was there, I could see where it burned, but it was fully alive with leaves and about 40 feet tall. So anyway, I got to know Chris and his family really well, spent probably 6 hours talking to them, walking around the yard. Went out that evening to do an investigation under the catalpa tree. I had a night vision video camera that I set up behind the catalpa tree, pointing in the direction where we would be investigating, just to kind of give a full view, since that seemed to be an area of activity. And I had a transcommunicational device called a spirit box that
Oh, yeah.
sweeps FM frequency at a very high rate.
That's the one that goes and then the
Yeah,
words come through, isn't it? Yeah.
producing white noise. And the theory is that it's an energy that these spirits or entities or whatever can latch onto and communicate. So I had that. I had a 35 millimeter camera, a digital recorder. My partner had the same type instruments. So myself, my partner, and Chris, we positioned ourselves under the catalpa tree, and we were out there, probably, half hour, 45 minutes, like conducting a paranormal investigation, but, directing it towards ET. I would ask questions, Chris asked questions. We were getting a lot of responses. Adela started coming through, the name of the home planet. And then they were saying, we're back, we're above you, we're at the moon, we're to the left of the moon. And we then noticed a really bright, round light to the left of the moon. Now, it was a clear night. The moon was about 3/4 full. There were a lot of stars, but this was clearly not a star. It was a huge, bright object to the left of the moon. So we're standing there talking about, is that a star or what is that? And we're debating about what it is. And my last memory was of this object coming towards us at a really fast rate. And the next thing I recall, like standing there and the bright light's gone. I'm kind of swaying back and forth. I feel really sick on my stomach, dizzy. I look at my partner, at Chris. They kind of appear sort of out of it. Then I notice my equipment's not in my hands. And, where's my equipment? I had my equipment, just a moment ago.
Mm.
And I look at my partner and I'm just like, and she didn't have her equipment. And I was like, where's our equipment? And we turned around and it was on the ground at the base of the catalpa tree, turned off. Well, that's counterintuitive to any investigation. I mean, your equipment's your primary tool, and there would have been no reason for us to turn the equipment off. That's
You do not turn off the equipment. First rule.
no. And having no memory of doing that, and we were just all really dazed. So we picked up the equipment, walked around to get the video camera, and it was still recording. But we shut it off, went into Chris's house. His wife came running out of the bedroom in her night clothes saying, where have you been? And we were outside under the catawba tree, and she was like, no, I've been looking out there. She said, I couldn't find you. She said, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. So we had gone out around 10. It felt like we were out there maybe a half hour or so. And she's saying it's 1 o'clock in the morning. And I just chalked it up to being tired. I'd driven, almost 4 hours to that location, talked all day. Now I've got to drive back home 4 hours in the middle of the night. I just wanted coffee, get on the road. So we packed up our equipment, turned the corner, and there was a huge bright light that just shot across the treetops from south to north that clearly was not a shooting star. It was much too low to the ground. But that's all I could come up with. I just looked at my partner and said, was that a shooting star? And it was really funny. We had done so many investigations. We hardly spoke on that 4 hour drive home. It was just like we were dazed or something. Well, we get here to my house. She has to drive to Savannah. We called a couple hours sleep. As soon as I got up, I just felt like something happened that I'm not aware of. So I started reviewing my audio recording. So we go out like at 10. I would have started my recorder at that time, and I had only an hour and 15 minutes of audio recorded. So we go in the house at 1. So there's almost 2 hours of missing time. And at the very end of that recording, my partner says, hey, you want us to turn off our equipment?
Oh, crikey.
And I didn't, there's no response on the recording. And she says, okay, we'll turn our equipment off. And I said, yeah, let's turn the equipment off. So someone directed us to turn the equipment off. I don't know who. It wasn't on the recording, but clearly we turned the equipment off. So I called her. I said, look, as soon as you get home, look at the video, listen to the audio, because I'm missing an hour and 45 minutes of audio. That's when she pulled the video. The camera had continued to run. So on the video, these beings appear, and we get this crazy audio about we're being abducted. They're actually saying we're abducting. They're breathers. We're on them, get them. I mean, and it's in English. And someone said, well, why would they be speaking English? And it took me a while to think about that. And I thought, well, if they wanted us to know, then they could fully speak any language that they needed to communicate if they wanted us to know what had occurred during that missing time, which clearly they did because they didn't turn off the video camera or ask us to. So then we knew something's happened. Over the next few days and weeks, memories started to surface. And at that point, I did seek out regression. I was having some memories, but I wanted a full picture. And so Kathleen Martin is certified to do hypnotic regression. I traveled to her home. I spent like 3 days with her. She regressed me for many hours. And so I have a very clear picture now of what happened on board the craft, that we were taken. And Philip and Elizabeth were there, as were 2 other people, another male and another female. So they are actually they call their planet Adela, but we call that star system Alpha Centauri. And that is beyond Oort, which Oort is like, at the end of our solar system. And that's what I was getting for several years through these paranormal investigations. We're beyond Oort. We're, on Adela. So that's where they reside. And, they gave me quite a bit of information about their planet, that they sustain themselves without any meat. They're vegetarians. They work together for the common good. Um, they're really just a really wonderful group of people. And if I can go there after I leave here, that's where I want to go. But
I have to ask this question now then. If there's such a bunch of wonderful people, why are they abducting you?
um, I think it's to let me know that they're here. They are a part of my life. And if I really make a concerted effort to communicate with them, then they will come get me, and I don't think it's the first time, because I have a lot of memories from childhood about other events, and actually my entire family saw their craft one evening. So um, I don't know. I think it's just to keep me connected to them. It's not, it's not a harmful thing. It's very enlightening, and that particular abduction, for lack of a better word, they gave me some pretty good information about their role in the consciousness of our planet.
You
That,
have to tell me then. I
yeah,
need to know this.
so what they do, they come into this area of our galaxy. They probe nearby nebulae, is what they told me. That's part of the work that they do. Um, they're also studying the sun and how the energy of the sun is becoming stronger and stronger. And as the energy from the sun increases, it's pushing the planets in our solar system further into the galaxy. This energetic wave is pushing us further out. And as that happens, consciousness changes. And, this stuff's in my head and it's so hard to verbalize, but it's like wave upon wave of energy. And in order to survive this, really a change that is going to continue to increase, we have to change our vibration to fit with this change that's occurring as an energetic pattern throughout our solar system. We as humans have to adapt to that increased energy. And what was really cool about being on board the craft was that everything was smart. Like, there was a plasma wall that was part of their energetic system that they introduced to me, that was full of numbers of 3, 6, and 9, and I couldn't touch it. And I remember asking, how do you know where you're going? There aren't any windows. And as soon as I said that, windows appeared. And so it was like if I had a thought, things would happen. And they said they did not need to see out, that they hop across timelines. They hop across space and time. But they held like a glass pad, a smart pad, but it was glass. And this was Philip. He held it, and he showed me like a city scene of like New York City, of all these people on the street, and it's from an aerial view. And some people were walking along perfectly normal, and then others were like shimmering and kind of jumping around and looking really strange. And he said, these are the people who are changing. You can see them. These people are not. We need to increase the change and the consciousness
And what
of.
happens if people don't, this evolutionary process or whatever the process is, doesn't change? What happens to those non-changers?
I think, that's like the $1 million question, but I'm thinking that there's going to be a split in consciousness, and those of us who sort of have this higher view of reality will just kind of slip on and go on as usual, and maybe there will be another Earth where these other people stay. I don't know. We didn't really get into that, but in reading some of like Michael Newton and Dolores Cannon, Convoluted Universe, and those kinds of things, that maybe the Earth itself is reincarnating, that not just people do, but planets reincarnate, and perhaps that split will come where these people that are vibrating at a higher frequency will go with this new Earth, and those that don't will just stay in the old Earth.
I hope, well, this is going to sound very crass when I say this. Is it like the Thanos thing from Marvels where 50% are clicked out of existence and therefore there's less people and therefore an easier life?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with.
Okay, well, just imagine someone snapping their fingers and half of the population disappears. Is it like that? Like one planet, one Earth goes this way, one Earth goes that way. They have
Yeah,
50%, we
I
have
don't know
50%.
if it's rapid or if it's gradual, and we don't know. I don't know. I think there's so many unanswered questions. And then if you look at quantum physics and in super string theory or M theory, they theorize there are as many as 11 dimensions
Hmm.
around us. So what are the possibilities? I don't know. I just feel like my explanation so elementary and so rude.
Yeah, it's because
Is
we don't know, we don't fully understand the science, so
no.
we can't possibly articulate it. And the science itself is incredibly hard to even grasp, even for
Oh,
like
it
high-end
is.
physicists, they can't
Yeah,
properly do
it
it.
is. They can theorize, but I just know the experiences that I've had, I just, there's just so much more. There's so much more than we have been led to believe.
That is definitely true. Now, what does your logical side of your brain tell you about the abduction side of things? Because my brain initially went to, if you're that good, why are you abducting me? Surely there's a part of your mind that thinks they could approach me this way logically in the day all together and just say, this is blah, 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 blah. Why the taking, the missing time, all the things that seem nefarious?
Um, well, I think for that particular evening, that's what we were asking for. Chris certainly, is an abductee.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was our goal, really, that night, was to have an encounter and possible abduction. I mean,
So
maybe
it wasn't
they,
nefarious because you asked for it.
yeah, yeah. That's why we were there. We wanted something to happen.
Would you have liked it to have panned out differently, though, rather than how it did?
Oh no, I mean, I loved how it panned out, and
Really?
I
Whoa.
would, oh yeah, I would like to have had more time on the craft, and um, don't feel that you have to bring me back.
Yeah, but you said two things that most people would find highly disconcerting. First off, we're above you. Now we're over here. That's like, what the? And then the second thing, on video or tape, oh, they're telling us to do this, to do that, and you can't see them. That's the, what the hell again? And then if you've got video evidence, and by the way, have you got it that I can see? The
It's on
beings on the video.
yeah, it's on my website.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
I
it
didn't see
is.
that. I would love to see that.
Let
Send me a
me,
link if you don't mind
yeah,
to the
it's
page.
PamelaNance.com.
Yeah, I've been on your website. I just didn't see the thingy.
Yeah, let me pull the site up, and It's the tab under video evidence.
That's probably one I didn't go into then.
Yeah, so that has the photographic evidence, the some of the audio, and then I have some other work under that
Oh
I've
no, I
done.
did see that. The one
Yeah,
that was like this position.
yeah, yeah.
That's yeah.
So those weren't the beings on the craft. So this is what's odd, and it's very difficult to explain. So we went out around 10 o'clock. We set up that video camera, started it up. Myself, my partner, Chris, and his wife stood beside the camera and chatted for a few minutes. Then you can hear us walk away to go under the catalpa tree. His wife went inside. I start up the equipment. You can hear that on the audio from the video camera. But then over that, you can hear what sounds like a roar. And I say, the craft has landed. And keep in mind, at the same time, you can hear us under the catalpa tree in real time investigating. But then there's this other audio, this craft. I say the craft's landed. Where are the windows? Then these windows appear, and I say, are those the same people looking out the window? And my partner says, oh crap, we're back. And this voice, excuse me, let me back up. The first thing you hear a roar, this metallic or robotic voice says, step out. And then that's why when I say the craft has landed and the windows, and my partner says, oh crap, we're back. So they overlapped us in time.
Yeah, there's a weird warping going on or something there,
Yeah.
isn't there?
So we're under the tree investigating, but we're also being brought back in those first minute, that first minute of being on the video recorder. So these photos that are on my website were from the video recorder in that first minute. So I don't know if they sent down these like guys ahead of time because they didn't look like what was on board the craft. This one being sitting up in the tree and the black, again, the black bodysuit, with the strange head and the headgear, and then the orb that morphs into like I think he looks Egyptian to me, but he appears to have like an energy pack on the front. He flies up behind the bigger guy. Um, so they were already out there. They were there when we went out to investigate. So I don't know if they sent like some emissaries down or what. Um, but they
It's
weren't the
highly weird,
same.
isn't it? If you
It is,
weren't you, right, knowing what you know, having your experience, looking at this from the outside, you would say, "What the hell?"
yeah,
It's just incomprehensible because there's weird guy, weird thing, orb, light being, weird thing in the tree, weird voices, videos, craft. What is going on? None of it
yeah.
seems to make sense.
Yeah, and all of that happens like in those first, like that first minute or so. And we also, when we walked around and took some photographs, we actually took a still shot photo of like this little lobster crab, lobster-handed being in one of the trees.
Yeah,
So
that's the
there
little
were
thing, isn't it?
actually
Yeah.
three, three different entities out in the yard when we first went out, and tons of orbs showed up in the photographs. So there was just a tremendous amount of activity on that property that night. And I really think it was because here I'd had lifetime experiences, so has Chris, so has my partner, and we went out there with this energy, and we're all energetic, and we want this to happen, and we certainly got what we asked for.
Hmm.
But
It
what
is
was
mind blowing, that
incredible,
one.
Yeah, what was incredible was just the amount of audio that we also retrieved from the video camera, like 50 different pieces of electronic voice phenomena about, them calling us breathers.
That's just weird. Silly mouth breathers, aren't we? Yeah. Right, so let's move on because I know we got to end not too far from here, and I do want to get us to the Koit zone. But before we get there, I just want to see what your take is on the bigger picture. I ask this of everyone because I want to know the ultimate picture. So putting everything together from your work, your research, your personal experiences, everything, what conclusions do you draw about the universe and how do you think it works?
Hmm. Well, I definitely believe in a creator. And I think the creator wants to experience everything. And that's why we exist, to give the creator the experience of life, death, love, hate, everything. And people say, why do bad things happen to good people? Um, the only thing I can come up with is that the creator has to experience everything. And if you look back through ancient Sanskrit and even um, the writings of Helene Blavatsky, we're in our fifth epoch of creation, when there's light and then there's darkness. So across the universe, I just think that, ultimately there's the creator that wants to experience everything. And then we're here having these experiences for the creator. Um, and, and I think that it also plays into our soul growth and, how we handle the experiences that we have, what we glean from them. Um, and how we can share with other people and bring them along to understand that there's not just one way to believe, that it's multifaceted, and that we're so much more than what we know. And we're older, we have such a history just on this planet that is so old. We tend to like get caught up in the dogma of religion and education and thinking that, we're just not that old as far as civilizations. But I think, the possibility exists that there have been multiple civilizations that have come and gone, and we don't have a clue. There's no evidence of this. And I don't know. I just think it's a fascinating reality to think about, and to try to, find your place within all the mystery.
So are you and I tendrils of the creator? Like that.
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah.
Earlier I said to you, in another life I was an archaeologist. Am I you?
Wow. I don't
What? Does the I not exist? Do you know
know.
what I mean?
Yeah, you could be.
And that, conversely, that means you're me and everyone else. And if you think in those terms, that's like, because
Yeah.
that means
I
you're
mean,
also the weirdo down the street, the homeless bum, the rich person, the everyone.
right, right.
Mm.
Uh, well, and I think, part of the having, multiple lives on this planet is to give us those experiences, to be that blind beggar on the street, um, to learn, what we need to learn from each lifetime to propel us to a higher way of thinking.
Well, here's higher way of thinking then, right? Past lives. I've been told there's no time. Time's an illusion. Everything's happening now, which means you're my past life and I'm your future life, but we're happening at the same time. Do you know what I mean? That could be.
Yeah, and we just don't have the brain capacity
No.
to comprehend that. It's just like when you try to think, okay, there's a creator. Where did the creator come from? You
Yeah,
know,
that's too big.
kind of your brain goes into a black hole, and there are just some things that you just can't comprehend. And that's really the way I felt that night as a 10-year-old when they brought me back. I had PTSD from that experience for about 15 years. Whenever the lighting was recreated or something was said, that it would just put me right back
Mm.
into that. And it was like trying to comprehend who created the creator. Where did the creator come from? You can't, your head just goes into a black hole. And so for years that happened to me after that experience until I studied, researched, and had other experiences and knew that it was, to help me develop further.
Mm.
But I just think that, there's some things we just cannot understand, cannot comprehend.
If anyone does comprehend and understand it, write in the comments who created the creator, and we will leave on that one. But for now, we are going to be entering the Koit zone. Koit zone! In the Koit zone, I ask you basic questions, so this is nice and easy ones for you.
Okay.
What's the best flavour in the world?
The best flavor?
Mm.
Hmm. Like you're literally asking me
A
the best.
taste, yeah, yeah, yeah. Just a taste about
Um,
like lime or something or anything.
cinnamon.
It's got a nice smell to it as well, that, doesn't it? Cinnamon.
Yeah, but I like the taste,
Yeah.
cinnamon coffee or tea
Did you ever
or
used to have those like jawbreakers that was hot,
uh,
sort of gummies, sort of things?
yeah,
They
to
were
a certain
nice.
extent, I can
Cinnamons.
tolerate them.
Yeah. I can't remember what they called. Fireballs they were called. They
Yeah,
were lovely.
fireballs.
Right, now I'm gonna pass over the next question that I had for you, which was can you lucid dream? Now you already gave me the answer to that. You did it a long time ago. Right, here's another one for you. On a food theme. What's the worst thing you've ever eaten?
Snails, escargot.
Snail. I thought you said nails like
No.
that. Yeah. Snails, yeah, gross.
Escargot, yeah,
Ugh. Ugh.
too
If
chewy.
yeah, gross. If you could modify yourself with technology, what would you like to achieve? So is there some sort of thing, like flight as an example, with wings? What would you like to achieve?
Yeah, it's funny when you were initially asking that question, I was thinking about um, oh gosh, now I can't remember the cartoon when I was a kid, but Astro Boy.
Astro
Did you ever
Boy.
see Astro Boy?
No, I didn't.
Astro Boy had like at the bottom of his legs sort of jets, so he could
Oh, I
propel
see. Yeah, yeah.
himself around. So yeah, if I could change a part of my body, I would be like Astro Boy.
Astro
So
Boy.
I could
We had
jet around.
Inspector Gadget. If you ever had that one, do you remember that one?
I've heard of it. I don't
Like
think that
go
I'll
go
watch
Gadget
it.
legs, and he like go really tall
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff. Tattoos, yes or no?
No.
Good. That is the correct answer. Um, are you artistic?
Yes.
And what do you do?
I draw and I write.
Excellent. Are you good at drawing?
Um, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, good on you.
Yeah. I
Fair
was
play.
very artistically inclined as a child and went to some summer schools for art and on scholarship and that kind of thing. I really don't do that much anymore. I write more than I draw or paint.
Could you ever make like faces look real?
Yeah, I could.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a hard one to
yeah,
learn, that I think.
it is. I like pencil and charcoal because of the shadowing that you can
Hmm,
do, and that really plays into the face.
definitely. I agree. Yeah, my mum's good at doing that. I just cannot for the life of me do it, but then that's each to their own and skills, skills, skills. What sport were or are you best at?
Um, as a kid, I was best at softball. I loved to play softball, but now I just, I run. I participate in sports to stay healthy.
Yeah, as you should.
So,
Are you into the pickleball thing? You know that's big these days, isn't it?
no, I haven't played pickleball, but it's funny you bring that up. In one of my paranormal investigations, I was at a very historic site in South Carolina, and I asked the spirits what kind of games do the children play, and they told me pickle. And that was a colonial era game that children played, much like dodgeball,
Ah,
but they
yeah.
just called it pickle. But no, I haven't played pickleball.
No, that's fair enough. But pickle, yeah, wow. I used to love dodgeball at school. I was quite good at that. What cartoon character would you like to see come alive? And you can't choose Astro Boy. He's already been used today.
Okay, let's see. Well, I really like South Park,
Yeah, that's good, isn't it?
but I don't know if I would want any of those guys to
No,
come
you wouldn't. Not
alive.
really. Your
They're
life
so,
would turn upside down if it's not
yeah,
already. By
they're really not nice. Hmm. I don't know.
just ponder that one, and
Yeah, I
maybe
will.
it'll come to you at some stage during the
Circle
day.
back.
Um, what place on Earth beckons you, but you've not been there yet?
Stonehenge. I
I'm going
really,
there this year. I've never been
are
myself, but yeah,
you?
I'm going.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's where I want to go really badly. Stonehenge.
Well, you can do it, can't you? It can be
Yeah.
achieved if you want
Oh
to. Yeah.
yes.
I know
Yeah.
money's not easy for like flying across the world, but
Yeah, but it's doable and hopefully I'll get to see it one day.
well, definitely. I hope you do. I hope you do. And the last one, which is what's under your fridge?
Cat hair.
There's always cat hair, even if you haven't got a cat. Any bits of cheese or anything, they always manage to get under there.
Possibly, but I'd say the majority is cat hair.
Is cat hair. Lovely. Okay, so it's time to get the vacuum out, is ultimately what that is saying to us. Right, before we close, that leaves the final two questions, which is what else do you like to do in your downtime? Any activities or guilty pleasures?
I like to garden. I raise vegetables and flowers, and I feed wild birds and squirrels
Oh,
and
that's
deer.
nice.
And so I love taking care of plants and wildlife.
Do you have success with your garden? Because Tiff and I, we fail quite a lot.
I do, and I use my healing abilities
Ah.
on my plants. I raised them here in my office starting in February from seeds, and I talk to them. I do healing around them, and I'm very successful. I have beautiful plants. I'll send you some photographs.
Please do. I'm gonna have to tell Tiff to get because she knows Reiki. So I'll have to. Does that work? It's
Oh
the same thing,
yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it? Yeah.
yeah,
I'll tell her to do that
absolutely.
on the tomatoes because we get blight on them things. You know.
Actually, I did some experiments in a physics lab with a
Really?
physics professor on using a control and intervention group on two trays of plants, and the healing the plants that I used the healing on grew to be 3 times larger than the ones that got nothing.
I wish I knew that. I'd have loved to
Um,
have talked to you about that. I'm going to keep that
yeah.
for the future if we can arrange one. But I don't want to put you
Yeah,
under
I'll,
pressure on
I'll
this
be
live
I'll be
stream.
happy to come back. I had a great near-death experience in my 30s
In
that I'd love
30s,
to
yeah, I know we
talk
missed that.
about. And
I got loads of questions
yeah.
that I missed out, but maybe they're for the future. Right, and the last question then, before we go, which is what are you currently working on? Do you have any projects on the go?
Um, I am currently working on a book. Um, I'm a co-author in 8 books, but I want to do a solo book, so I'm working on that. I'm working on a presentation for a conference in June in Atlanta, Georgia. I just finished up participating in 2 consciousness documentaries that will be released hopefully this year. Um, I may be presenting at the MUFON Symposium um,
Quality.
this summer, and potentially on Ancient Aliens on the History Channel.
I love
I'm
me some
meeting,
ancient aliens.
yeah, so I'm meeting with the producer to talk about that possibility. So a lot of activity.
A lot of irons in the fire. Amazing.
Yes,
Pam, thank you ever so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time. What I
my
would say,
pleasure.
thank you. Everyone watching, listening to this, check out the links in the description to Pam's sites. Go and certainly look at the video and audio evidence because that must be mind blowing, and I'm going to revisit it again afterwards to make sure I catch every bit of thing that I need to from that. Yes, thank you ever so much, Pam.
Thank you, Koit. I've thoroughly enjoyed it and I'm happy to come back. Just let me.
Yes, that's a win for me. Thank you ever so much. Goodbye,
Sure.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.